Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining our new Policymakers Live series. My name is Susan Martin. I'm the Director of Government Affairs here at Mass Bio. I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. The discussion will be a one-on-one discussion with Bob and our guest, who he'll introduce momentarily. That will go for about 20 to 30 minutes. And then after that, we'll open it up for Q&A from the audience. If you'd like to pose a question, please type that into the chat box, and we will take as many questions as we can as time allots. Again, thanks for joining, and Bob, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Susan, and thank you to all of you for joining us for our first ever Policymakers Live, which is going to be a new series of virtual policy briefings that here at Mass Bio that we're going to be holding over the next several weeks and months with actual members of the legislature and the administration. You know, folks, as the world has shifted dramatically in the last 2 months, I can assure you, and you all know, that policymaking in Massachusetts has certainly not slowed down. So what we wanted to do at Mass Bio is to create this new platform for our members to directly engage with legislators and members of the administration in lieu of those traditional avenues that are currently not available. The State House may be closed, but the business has not stopped. And it's so important that we hear from leaders on the Hill, we communicate to our member companies, and we create this platform so that we all can continue to be effective. You know, and I want to thank, before we get into introducing our first guest and getting into the discussion, I really need to thank the sponsors. These folks are sponsoring the first 3 Policymakers Live events that are all during the month of May. So I want to thank Alexion, I want to thank Amgen, I want to thank BMS, and I want to thank Pfizer. Thank you to you 4 companies for helping, you know, Mass Bio continue to advance our mission of making Massachusetts the best place in the world for the life sciences. We're not called the state of possible for no reason at all. It's because we are the best place in the world for this industry. And the reason we have become the best place in the world for this industry is because academia, industry, and government have all worked in a true partnership. With that being said, our first guest is an amazing advocate for our industry. I want to welcome Chairman Aaron Michlewitz to our first Policymakers Live. Aaron was elected in 2009 to represent the 3rd Suffolk District. He was elected as chairman of the very important House Committee on Ways and Means in February of 2019, and he's been off to an amazing start. Most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's important that you all know he may be the chairman of Ways and Means, but most importantly to us, he was awarded the Mass Bio Legislator of the Year award just earlier this year at our policy breakfast. My goodness, doesn't that seem like it was so long ago? It wasn't even that long ago, Mr. Chairman. I couldn't think of a more important legislator to have to join us now, given his role in House leadership and his insight into the budget. We are all looking forward to hearing your thoughts on how legislating has changed, Mr. Chairman, and how the House plans for the rest of the season, how you're thinking about the budget, and also importantly, how are you doing through all of this? So with that being said, you know, Mr. Chairman, how are you? How are things going? And could you just give us a little overview on how the House is really changing to our new, you know, shared reality, and how you're doing working remotely? You look like you're doing fine.
No, thank you, Bobby, and thank you for having me. And I appreciate the opportunity, I guess, to be the guinea pig of your first Policy Live discussion. And yeah, I mean, it does seem like a lifetime ago when
it does.
When you gave me that award the couple of months. It was only what, late January?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
late January.
It was only a couple months ago, but it seems like a different world. And the last 2 months have been extremely tiring, but certainly but also just extremely you know, fascinating in terms of how we've had to continue to move and operate. And like you said, the State House is closed. It is closed to the public. You can't go in there, but we are doing session. We were doing informal session. We just started doing formal session from the House last week. And we are having hearings. Committees are having hearings. I know, like, for instance, election laws is having a virtual hearing today on a number of election bills. And that's something that we're continuously trying to do and trying to operate. It took some adjustment, to create new rules for us to start voting remotely and having a different set of circumstances on how we're gonna proceed. But it's I think we're getting into a better place, as a body in terms of by doing it that way. It's still gonna, a lot of the kinks are still gonna have to be worked out, and we haven't done anything yet that is, I would classify as too controversial. It's been pretty simple bills so far. Like we had to do a RANDS bill, which is Revenue Anticipated Notes bill, to bond money, to allow the treasurer to bond money based off of the income tax filing deadline, which created a hole in our FY20 budget cycle, our appropriations. And so this bill that we did allowed us to allow the treasurer to borrow what is necessary to let us pay our bills for FY20, because unlike the federal government, where we delayed the tax returns, the income tax returns, till July 15th, just like the federal government did. But unlike the federal government, we have to keep a balanced budget. We can't just spend into deficit. And so in order to do that, to fill up that hole, we had to do a bill that would allow us to borrow through the rest of the year, rest of the fiscal year. And so those are the challenges that we've been facing. Some of them have been easier than others, but there's certainly been each and every one of them have been fascinating in terms of how we're operating in this new environment, in this new world.
Yeah, when you talk about this new environment, you did say that you took up some business. I think it's hard for us, most of the audience that's on board right now is our policy working group. So it's folks that understand, for the most part, the inner workings of government. What does this mean? Like, let's talk a little bit about transportation. Let's talk about healthcare. When you look at those big issues that were on the horizon for you and your colleagues and the speaker, as well as, your folks on the other side and the Senate side, I mean, there are big issues out there to tackle. What can we expect? And again, when nobody is being critical about anything right now, because quite frankly, I want to say that, as a leader of the life sciences industry, I could not be more proud of what our industry is doing to step up. And then as a citizen of Massachusetts, I couldn't be more proud of how folks in government are being nimble and figuring out how to continue to do this. There's no playbook, right, Mr. Chairman? No one knew how to react to this. So, and I've said it on many calls, I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, whatever, I'm pretty proud of government in Massachusetts right now, leading the way. I mean, we're drastically hit. What does this mean for the big picture? Like, what are you thinking?
I mean, right now, the focus is pretty strictly COVID related. Bills and legislation that we're considering and taking up is in response to the pandemic, in response to the changing world, and how we're going to allow not just for us to operate, but for Massachusetts to kind of continue to operate and allow folks to be able to live as normal of a life as possible throughout these troubling times. And, those have been the things that we've been reacting to through legislation, piecemealing it here and there. But overall, I mean, in terms of what we're going to do probably going forward, it's mostly going to be COVID related. Some of that may intertwine with some of the things that we have thought about in the past, or that have been initiatives in the past. I know one thing that many in this audience is interested in was telemedicine, and that conversation. Telemedicine, I mean, that was something that obviously had been kicking around between the House and the Senate for quite some time. And it took this crisis to kind of make it, a reality and
correct. Yeah.
We do business. And now, you're seeing that it's working. I think it's having rave reviews from a lot of folks. And I think that is one of those things where if it works, I think it's here to stay and not to make any changes of it, even after the pandemic. But everything we do is somewhat related to how we're going to deal with the COVID response and the economic response, because obviously there's a public health component to this that is the priority right now, that is taking the majority of a lot of people's times. But the long-term economic concerns here are critical, and they're really on our mind, related to how we're going to move forward. And those two things are those are the two things that we're focused on at the moment.
Yeah. You and I have known each other for a long time, probably almost 20 years now. Unfortunately, it's going by too fast, right? But I end every one of these conversations that I have when we talk about the silver lining that's going to come of all this. So we'll end on an optimistic note, and things like telemedicine are certainly part of that. But let's go back now. Like, how do you think about the budget, right? And again, I don't know the answer to this. I think a lot of people don't know. When you think about how do you do a budget, when you look at what's happening as it relates to unemployment, there's just so many unknowns, and you know how the timeline is so important to how you do your business. You are literally, the chief financial officer of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and establishing a budget. And again, you have probably one of the most difficult jobs in government right now to build that budget during a time like this. Like, what's keeping you up at night?
Well, there's a lot that's keeping me up at night. I'm not getting much sleep, to say the least.
I can imagine.
Yeah, but it's funny. I mean, I had my first budget last year, as many of you know.
Yeah.
And we had $1 billion surplus. It was a great economy. It was very easy in terms of pleasing a lot of the members, because you were able to give out a lot of goodies across the spectrum of the budget. And this is obviously the complete opposite of what's going to happen. I've talked to many of Ways and Means chairs over the past that have served over the last 20 years. And we have a lot of complications related to this, but one of them in particular is that this downturn is in the middle of an election cycle as well. And all these other huge downturns that we've had, and you were in the House for some of them. The major years like 2009 or 2001, or the ones that were really the start of the downturn, they weren't in the middle of an election cycle. So you're trying to deal with the election cycle concerns and the needs, while also trying to build a budget that is going to be very difficult and very challenging, and probably one of the most challenging budgets that we've ever seen in terms of the amounts of potential lost revenue. We did an economic roundtable last April 14th, which was bringing all the economists and folks, the policymakers, policy thinkers related to this, what they were seeing in terms of what our revenue loss would be. And we were getting a wide range of folks, a wide range of ideas, coming from like $2 billion shortfalls to a $6 billion shortfall. But the one thing that was unanimous at the time was that no one really knew exactly what the right number would be, because of the unknown of where we are, and we put ourselves, every other economic slowdown over the last maybe even 100 years, to a certain extent has been, there's been outside forces which have created that economic slowdown, whether it is a bond market crashing, or the real estate market busting, or we went to war, World War II and stuff like that. But this is the first time, because of the public health pandemic, we actually, the economy was slowed down purposely by government. Government decided to take a step and slow down the economy for the first time. And one of the economists called it correctly, like a self-induced coma. Like, we put the economy into a self-induced coma. How we wake up from that coma is really anybody's complete guess, because we've never done that before.
Yeah.
We've never had a situation where we put it to sleep and then we have to awake it. And how it wakes up, and how slowly it recovers, or how slowly it wakes up, is really, a lot of people have different opinions and thoughts on that, but no one has the exact right message or the 100% certainty on what it's going to be. And so when these economists laid out their, what the FY21 plan would look like, they were very clear that there's a lot of different mitigating factors here that could change things. When we wake up, or how we open up the economy, how people react to that, how quickly they want to, reinvest in our economy is one thing. Whether the pandemic comes back or not, and and potentially in a second wave in the fall is another thing. How the federal government handles this. I mean, there's talk about potential states being bailed out from their revenue loss from the federal government, and the House, Nancy Pelosi obviously put together a proposal related to that. But there's a lot of uncertainty related to how, if that passes the Senate, or whether the president is interested in doing that. So a lot of these things leave us with some real unanswered questions and some real guessing at the end of the day. Mass taxpayers, for instance, had our shortfall at $4.1 billion back in April. They're going to come out in the next day or so with an even higher number. They haven't even already. I know we were talking to them. They're going to come out with an even higher number because of things have changed even in the last month related to that. So how we react to that has been very challenging. Obviously, we do a budget proposal typically in April from the House, and that obviously we've had to go through an unconventional system here. We're working with our colleagues in the Senate to try to come up with a process that would work, but we're still not there necessarily in an understanding of exactly what the world's going to look like, through FY21. Never mind, or through each month of FY21. Never mind just on July 1st when we need to have at least some type of budget, to keep the lights on and keep government working.
Yeah. Hey, those are all great points, and thank you for the a self-induced coma analogy. I'm on like 3 more Zoom calls today. Are you okay if I take that and kind of make it my own?
I already stole that, so you can steal that yourself.
I will. But hey, let's look at it this way. Right now we are in that self-induced coma, and we are trying to figure out the best way to come back to life. I just want to take a brief opportunity to thank you and your colleagues for actually, we've had quite a bit of discussion with the majority leader on this as well, and I was able to do a town hall to most of the members of the House, and we did one on the Senate side. Thank you for what we've done over the last 10 to 15 years. If we didn't position ourselves as the best place in the world, if we didn't have the Life Science Center and the Life Science Initiative and government truly being a partner, we would not have 70 companies in Massachusetts right now working on either diagnostics, therapeutics, or a vaccine. And did we ever think in our lifetime that the most important thing to coming out of that coma and getting our economy back to normal, the most important thing to the world's economy is a vaccine, okay? We're manufacturing vaccine right now in Massachusetts at one of our member companies. We have, 100 vaccines in clinical trials right now, and some of them are from Massachusetts-based companies. So I want to say thank you for that. Let's shift off of the budget for a minute in your role as Chair of Ways and Means. And folks, I see there's a lot of participants on this call right now. If you want to use the chat box to start getting some questions into the queue, Susan is going to manage that in about 5 or 10 minutes or so. We'll go to Q&A from the audience because I know you guys might have some questions for the chairman. But let's shift off of your role as Chair of Ways and Means, and let's go back to being a state rep for your district. You have a very special and unique district that you represent as a member of the House of Representatives. When you look at the retail component, the restaurant component, right? That is a key spot in Massachusetts for people who want to go and enjoy amazing food and social activities. How have you been managing that immediate concern to your constituents?
I mean, it's been tremendously difficult, and the restaurant, obviously I have in the North End that I live in and grew up in, we have 92 liquor licenses, 92 restaurants.
Wow.
In the North End alone, in basically the 1 square mile that is the North End, and I would say, at least half of them are completely shut down. Half of them are doing takeout and delivery, and the other half are completely shut down. Some of them, we're fearful if they're going to come back, if they can come back. Some of them just don't know, and there's a lot of fear and uncertainty. A lot of these folks invested their lives, put all the money they had and put all their time and effort and years in their lives into these businesses. And this pandemic is going to change the way they operate, as has changed their operation to begin with, and it's going even after we get out of this, or things get a little bit better, or whenever Governor Baker officially opens things back up. Their situation is going to be a lot different. You're going to have obviously social distancing a necessity for them. Their capacity is going to be limited. The way they operate with like PPE is going to be required. There's going to be a lot of more overhead costs for them that they've never had before. And so and restaurants were always, the type of businesses that we're always on the margins. There was never something where, you're living week to week in a lot of senses. Not every, there's obviously some long-standing real, established restaurants that have, that have a strong clientele and have an ability to weather, difficult storms, but a lot of them were, on the margins and living, like I said, week to week in relation to how they do their business. And this thing is completely blown it up. And it's there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of pain. I think, and this goes for not just the North End, but Chinatown and in the South End, and the restaurants that, because I represent 3 great neighborhoods with 3 great, restaurant scenes. And, the thing that is most concerning to me isn't the ones that, like in the North End, a lot of them, some own the building. Like a lot of the restaurants over time, they just bought the building, or they own the building. It's the renters that I'm most concerned about, because the rent's still going to be due. The rent's still going to be needed to be paid. And we're going to get to June, July, and August, and they might be open, but they're just not going to be able to, there's no way they're going to be able to get the revenue that they need. Take all those other pieces out, you're also losing all the events at the Garden, all the concerts, all the Celtics games, all the Bruins games. You're losing all the tourists, because I don't think anybody's going to be traveling much this year. And obviously, we've delayed the marathon till September, for instance. Who knows if we're even going to be able to do that? But that typically is a weekend in April where everyone comes and has pasta, because they all want to carb up for their marathon run. So that weekend is probably the busiest weekend in the North End as well. Not just in Boston, but it's the biggest weekend here for a lot of the Italian restaurants. And who knows if we're going to be able to do that in September? It's getting less and less likely. It seems like it. I mean, the mayor's dealing with that difficult discussion right now. But these are the type of things that we're working on. We're talking with businesses. We're trying to figure out what is the best way to proceed on that, and how we do that. And it's again, balancing the political discussions and the political conversations on how bills can get passed, or how types of bailouts or whatever you want to call them could get done. These things are still ways away from being discussed or being determined, but there's things that we are discussing. Excuse me, that's what I meant to say.
Well, I know, and we tend to talk, most of 99% of our conversations are related to healthcare, innovation. I mean, we are a great place for the life sciences here in Massachusetts, but it's important for people to know, and I think you're well prepared for the position that you have, because tourism and putting heads in beds is one of the largest industries here in Massachusetts. And I think we've all realized that that's going to be something that could go away for a long period of time. Again, another reason that vaccination is so important, because even our member companies right now, Mr. Chairman, we're having advisories come from our large member companies saying that people are not allowed to travel for the rest of the year. That means they're not coming here. A lot of them come here, right, for that purpose. And I'm real worried about hotels. We're all worried about restaurants and hotels. So thank you for keeping that on the radar. We'll talk about some silver lining stuff after this, like telemedicine and maybe what this means for traffic, right? I think, one of the things that
a lot less traffic, that's for sure.
Well, and think about it. Our biggest issue, we were about to release our MassBio State of Possible 2025 strategic plan. One of the biggest issues that we were begging government to help us with was traffic and congestion. It literally wasn't at a tipping point anymore. It was at a breaking point. We were having trouble recruiting companies to come here and having people come here because it was unbearable, the congestion. Hopefully, I'm going to be honest with you. I wasn't a big fan of having people work from home and using Zoom. Quite frankly, I didn't know how to use it a few weeks back, right? So when you look at the fact that here at MassBio and many of our member companies, folks that aren't directly involved with the research and development, the folks that could perform their duty at home have been working from home, and it's been very effective. Do you think that a lot of this will carry through after the pandemic, when people are more comfortable coming back, when we have therapeutics and ultimately a vaccine that increase the confidence level of people to feel safe and come back out? Do you think we're going to do a better job as it relates? Could this be part of the solution to the transportation problem that would not be able to get fixed overnight?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely going to be part of the conversation, because you have a lot of these same folks that I've been talking to in terms of trying to gauge what we're dealing with in terms of revenue loss. A lot of them are talking to their members and talking to their folks, and there is a wide belief that at least for the next year, if not 2 years, depending on how the vaccine situation plays out, that you're going to get, even when the economy opens back up, you're still going to get about 30 to 40% of the folks that are still going to be working at home on a consistent basis. And that may adjust a lot how, a number of businesses decide to proceed in terms of, how they craft their offices, their operations. You may see, I think there's a lot of discussion about what's going to happen to the commercial real estate market in Boston in particular, because once leases once leases come up, will people start saying, well, it's an easier way to do this now, through Zoom, through other, means that you don't have to have as big of an office as you might maybe once needed to have. And then, so that may change the dynamics of the commercial real estate market. People may not feel comfortable coming into the city as much, because of the feeling that there's a lot more, there's a lot more potential for, spread of the disease if you're coming into the city of Boston versus, being maybe out in the suburbs or in a different location. So people may look at this as a circumstance to change the mode or the method that they do, or that they operate their business. And that in turn may change the transportation conversation related to how much comes into the city on a daily basis, whether that is through vehicles or through, public transportation or whatnot. So there is definitely a circumstance here where this is going to potentially make some changes, definitely in the short term, but, very possibly on the long term as well.
Yeah, those are all great points. Great points. It's ironic that we've heard both from our member companies. We've heard companies say, geez, we might not need as much space because people can, that don't have the direct hands-on R&D role can work from home in the future. But we've also had companies say, especially in the lab space, Mr. Chairman, if they're going to have to social distance, while they're working in the lab, which they do, you can't have two gas chronometers, GCs, on top of each other in a lab. So they might need more space so that they can spread the lab out so that people can work safely during this situation. So I guess only time will tell, and we just have to figure it out as we go.
Yeah, and I think different industries are going to look at this differently. I think it really will depend on what works for them from a social distance standpoint, from a making sure that their employees feel safe standpoint. And there's a whole host of variety of different issues that they're going to have to calculate to make those determinations. But I definitely think you're going to see some shifts in how things have been done before.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. It's 10:30 right now, so I'm going to go to the first question from the audience. It's a pretty simple one, actually, and thank you for the question, Karina. We know that members are swamped with email right now. What is the best way for not just your constituents, but the folks on this call who are more, legislative folks and policy folks from our member companies? What is the best way for them to communicate with you in your office at this time?
Well, email is the best, in terms of that, because a lot of us aren't in our office. I go in almost every day because of the chair and the situations that I'm dealing with on a day-to-day out basis. But a lot of my colleagues are not coming in every day. A lot of my colleagues, if they are coming in, their staff is not coming in typically. A lot of things are being done remotely, and so email is still the way to do it. Not sending out mass emails to every member, or is one way of doing that, but trying to individualize things is obviously is the best way. It's the way that catches my attention immediately or more frequently. And I think just using the folks like yourself, Bobby, and like folks that know how to reach us in needed times, is using you guys as a resource as well is very important, because we're looking for guidance on a lot of stuff, and things are coming at a lot of different speeds and from a lot of different directions, and our heads are on a swivel like never before. And so knowing people that knowing that we can go to someone like yourself and have a conversation with you and get a broad sense of what the industry's feeling or whatnot is very important to help guide us in the middle of a confusing issue maybe.
Oh, wow. That's great. The questions are rolling in here. This is amazing. And I'll do my best. Susan, I hope you don't mind. I'm pretty comfortable. I got my readers on. I'll manage the questions coming in here. One viewer said, geez, congratulations. You've come a long way since Northeastern News. I don't know what that means, but did you used to work at the Northeastern News?
I think that's Rob Schultz, who was at Northeastern, and I was at Northeastern. I was the sports writer at the Northeastern News when I was in college. That was my dream. I knew I wasn't good enough to play sports, so I wanted to be a sports writer, and then I realized there was no money in journalism, so I went into politics instead, I guess.
Yeah, oh yeah, there's not much money there either, Mr. Chairman. So, and Rob also has a follow-up question saying that other states make decisions, okay? And sometimes those decisions poses a direct risk on our population, especially those living in vulnerable populations. Is there anything we can do to help you advocate for these types of issues to protect our own population?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the understanding of what other states are doing is important. And there is, I know from the governor's standpoint, he has worked hand in hand as much as he possibly can with the surrounding states, the New England states, New York as well. Governor Cuomo, him and Governor Cuomo have been in contact on a almost daily basis, if not, weekly basis. And so working with them is very important, and having an understanding. I mean, I think we're looking at, like, for instance, we're dealing with this election discussion and how we're going to handle the election, in the middle of a pandemic. We've seen what other states have done, and some of the challenges they've had. And so we are learning from them is the best solution in my experience. And so, that works when it comes down to vulnerable populations as well. And we are the leader when it comes to dealing with vulnerable populations, in terms of of our experience and how we've done things. We are on the forefront of that. People are learning from us in a lot of ways, and this pandemic has been just as another sign of that as well. I mean, we're putting our homeless not just in shelters, but we're actually using Suffolk dorms and Emerson dorms and places where that's unconventional. Typically, we're putting our most vulnerable populations in those places to protect them from COVID-19, to give them social distancing. And other states are looking at us related to that. And so that's I think we can always share information and go back and forth and learn from each other. And that's how we've always approached things, but even more so probably in this time frame right now, or in this pandemic time.
That's some great insight. I love this audience. Here's another one. Hey, thoughts on timing for the $1 billion SUP budget recently filed by the governor? What would the timing on that be? And when you do take it up, do you imagine a typical amendment process? Is there anything we should be prepared for?
Is that a member on the House asking that question?
This could be a plant. The gentleman from, I'm not going to say.
It's a good question. In fairness, we literally got the SUP yesterday. I think it was.
Yes.
Yeah, it was yesterday. And it's a pretty blank canvas in terms of how it was written in terms of a bill process. But there's actually a lot to the guidelines that the federal government has given us related to what the guardrails are going to be on that $1 billion SUP budget, because everything is going to have to be either coming from the CARES Act or be reimbursed from FEMA. So anything we do is going to have to be COVID related, and there is going to be guidelines on what that is. And so for us, we're trying to figure out what those guidelines exactly are before we move forward. And then obviously working with my co-chair, Chairman Rodrick, I think we're gonna try to be on the same page as much as we possibly can. What that will mean for potential amendment process, I think is to be determined, but certainly something we're going to examine and see if we can be as helpful as we can for members. We wanted to hear from the members, and I think the speaker in his statement when the governor filed the SUP budget was very clear that we want to hear from members and working with our membership to try to figure out what is the best way to allocate this money appropriately and get the needs out there that are most efficient or most needed at the moment.
That's great. That's great. Francis is asking, he's pointing out one of the challenges we're seeing, that because of this lockdown, this needed lockdown, right? A lot of people are foregoing routine but important medical care because it's not deemed emergency or COVID-19 related. We all know that this could cause another epidemic down the road. Governor Baker and the state have begun encouraging people to get the medical care that they need. How can we work together to encourage people to seek this kind of care?
Well, I think the governor's, there's got to be a feeling from folks that it's safe to go into hospitals. It's safe to, go get procedures done. And I think that, that's going to be a message that's going to have to be, loud and clear when we reopen the economy. And it's also going to have to be loud and clear from the hospital standpoint. And I think those messages are going to make people feel like they're ready to go back and have procedures. I know some folks, friends of mine, or people in my constituents of mine that have gone and gotten procedures done that aren't necessarily, related to COVID. A lot of them have been on emergency basis and not something that, could be put off much long, for any really period of time. But I think, it's really about the messaging when the economy reopens, that these are the things that people should be doing and getting out there and doing that. I think the governor will certainly make that a priority in when he decides to roll that out.
Yeah, I think it's important to know for people that are on our call here, our Zoom call, our meeting, when you go back, when you look at what we were able to do in 07 and 08 in the last real strong economic downturn, Wall Street crashed, right? There was no IPOs that were happening from 08 to 2012. We were able to pull the Massachusetts economy out of that hole quicker than others. We did it by playing our strengths. We did it with life sciences, clean tech, with creative economy. We played our strengths. One of the things that a lot of the discussions that we've had with you, your office, the speaker, your colleagues on the Senate side, as well as regularly with the administration. I've talked to Secretary Sutters more now going through this. The tone of the discussion's a lot different than when we were talking about Medicaid reform several months ago. As you know, it's been great to come together. We realize that there's things that we need to do so that we can get our economy, pull ourselves out sooner. So, hopefully we can continue to talk about those things that we can do now, like telemedicine, right? That's going to help us come out quicker. Things that we can do as a Commonwealth. How do we utilize platform technologies in our world-class academic medical centers so that we can lead the way with clinical trials as it relates to developing vaccine? That will get us out closer to that community immunity through antibodies, through resistance, through antibodies, and getting vaccines into people. Those are the things that we want to continue to work with you on. Someone asked, Mary's asked a question along those lines that I have not thought of. I've always been thinking of things that are directly related to our industry that could help us pull out of the economic downturn. She's saying, would it be possible to do these road and bridge projects now while there is no traffic, assuming that we could financially figure out how to do that? Because that would be something that helps us as opposed to trying to do it when all the traffic's back.
Yeah.
That's a outside the box question. Thank you, Mary.
No. And it's a legitimate question. It's obviously something that I know some folks have talked about, and it's important to have that conversation because obviously construction right now is at a standstill related to whether it's Boston. I know there's some other parts of the state that are operating, but for the most part, the greater Boston area is shut down with construction for public health concerns and public health reasons. When that starts back up, I think there'll be definitely a push or hopefully an ability to get things done. Road projects that are already maybe currently in the process, get them done quicker because there'll be less congestion, less time. I still wonder what exactly those projects would be that we could add on to that to make it quicker. I think it would all depend on the individual project and what the process would be. But certainly the lesser of congestion, the lesser of population coming into the city is definitely going to make things free things up a little bit easier for us to do potential projects. And we put some money in the last supplemental budget, the closeout sup from the end of December, for Chapter 90 for for the MBTA, for them to be able to do some additional work on our public infrastructure. And that money is still there, and it's going to be used throughout this year. And luckily that's there. But us putting more investment into it, and this leads to a further conversation about public transportation and the transportation stuff that we did. I don't know necessarily how that's going to proceed, because I think other things have become priorities related, that are more COVID related at the moment.
All right, we only have about 3 or 4 more minutes here, so we're going to go to our closing remarks, Mr. Chairman. I want to know from you, because we only end things here at MassBio on a positive note, because we work in the industry of solving unmet medical needs. We work in the industry of helping sick people. I want to hear from you. What are some of the silver lining aspects of this horrible crisis that we're in, something that we've never experienced? What do you see as some good that could come of this?
Well, being the son of a doctor, my dad was a doctor at Tufts Medical, and first at the North End Health Center, and then at Tufts Medical at Brockton Hospital. The thing that I'm enjoying the most out of this, if you can call it enjoying at all, is the attention and the praise and the love that our healthcare workers are getting. I grew up in it, and things got real cynical with healthcare and with workers, and a lot of lawsuits and conversations around that, whether it's through doctors, whether it's through other folks, and the attention, the front line that they're getting treated like policemen, like firefighters, and things like that, and it's been a silver lining to me in terms of how proud I am that that my dad was a doctor. He's retired now, but and how caring for people, how important that was. And so that's one of the things that I've taken from this, and have watched, and with some pleasure in relation to that. And we have John Santiago, who's a colleague of mine, is an ER doctor in BMC, and it's been interesting to watch him do the job day in and day out, on the front lines. And so that's the thing that I've been taking with this on a positive standpoint. There is the hope is that we can, one of the things that we were able to do, and the biotech community was very important in this back in the last downturn, the last great recession. We were able to get out of it because of the industries that we had here and how strong we were. And I'm hopeful that we can, once again, rely on those industries to help carry us through, a lot of these issues that we face. It's going to be challenging. It's a different challenge, obviously, than it was in 08 and 09 and 10. And maybe more, obviously, a more drastic challenge. But the hope is that these industries that has made Massachusetts such a great place to live, to work, to grow the economy, is the places that we're going to go back to, once again, to try to help, build that economy even stronger, and build it back and build it even stronger going forward. So, those are the things that I'm looking at and focused on. And it's not just the biotech industry, it's the universities, it's the healthcare, the tourism. Again, the tourism piece to us is, people want to come here. We want to make that, once we get through this cloud, and this devastation, I think we want to make sure that we refocus on those places, on those pieces of the economy that have carried us to this point.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think those are all wonderful things. One of the things that we did immediately as an industry was get together with Stevie Walsh over at the Mass Health and Hospital Association, and COBIT and MassBio and MassMedic. We pulled together, day 2 of this pandemic, right after the first conversations that we had with the administration about the lack of PPE and the lack of ventilators and the inability to achieve continuity in our supply chain. We were able to when we built out the supply hub, we got over 200 companies to donate all of their PPE to the frontline healthcare heroes within 24 hours. To date, it's over 500 companies, not sell, donate. And to see our organizations, hey, we were the best place in the world for this industry because of, as I said earlier, government, academia, and industry working together. We weren't working together even as remotely close to as we are now through this. That's not going to stop after this crisis. We're not going to let it stop. The fact that a vaccine traditionally takes 5 to 12 years to invent, And now we're going to do that, hopefully in less than a year, maybe less than 10 months. That's unheard of. It shows, I got into this industry 18 years ago so that I could raise money and invest in companies that would find a drug for my kid. It took 18 years and over $10 billion to do that. And thankfully, he's doing well right now. He's on a medicine. We got him locked down tight. This virus would be catastrophic for him. So, we're a little hypersensitive to it. But thank God he's on that medicine. To think that we're going to be able to do this for a vaccine, what if moving forward, we attack every unmet medical need like that? It's going to be a better world. I think we're all working better together. We're sharing better together. People are hopefully can hold it together and continue to be kind to one another. I'm extremely optimistic right now because of what we have a front row seat to here in Massachusetts. We'll get a therapy soon. We'll get a vaccine sooner than people could have thought. And those are all the things that we need to lead with. The only thing that's going to get us out of this, guys, is science. And right now, we are the best place in the world for science. We want to continue to drive that. And once we're through all of this, we want to continue to work with our champions in government, one of which you, sir, are. And we can't thank you enough for your leadership, what you have done, not just now as chair of Ways and Means, but going back in your entire career, whether, when you were a rank and file member, all the way back to when you worked in the building, helping other elected officials as well. You've done so much for this industry. You've done so much for the Commonwealth. You've done so much for the patients, and we can't thank you enough. And again, thank you for taking, time out of your busy, we know how busy you are. This is insane, right? We know how busy you are.
I appreciate the opportunity to say a few words, and I appreciate the conversation. And, the reason why I like doing these is because it helps give perspective in terms of how, what we should be focused on.
That's right.
You can't just sit up at the State House and even in these isolation times, you just can't sit up at the State House and just think that things are going to come, or solutions are going to fall in your lap, or that, things are going to happen because you're just talking to each other up there. And we need to be talking to industry leaders. We need to be talking to people on the ground, dealing with this issue firsthand. And so that's why, to me, these things are very valuable. And I always want to take the opportunity to do them when I get a chance to, because of that. I feel getting out there and getting an understanding is going to help us do the job better and us be able to respond better.
Well, that's a wonderful way to close out. I want to thank Alexion, Amgen, BMS, and Pfizer again for making this possible. And I want everybody on board to know that our next Policymakers Live is going to be on May 21st at 3 o'clock. And that's going to be with the one and only chair of the Senate Biotech Caucus, Senator Joe Boncore.
Oh, so my senator. Good.
That's right. We're excited to have him on board as well. And please, Mr. Chairman, thank the speaker for us and let him know that we will continue to do everything that we can do to support all of your efforts in government to put this crisis behind us.
Excellent. Thank you, Bobby. Good seeing you.
Thank you, folks. And thank you, everyone, for joining in. Take care.